All right, welcome everybody. Let's start with our blessing for study, and then I'm going to introduce our teacher, Rabbi Darah Lerner. Please join me. Actually, now's a good moment if you want to unmute so that we can say this blessing together and we can hear one another. You can feel free to do that now. Please join me. Baruch
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 atah
atah
Adonai
Adonai
Eloheinu melech
Eloheinu melech
haolam
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 asher
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 kidshanu
kidshanu
kiddushanu
b'mitzvotav
b'mitzvotav
b'mitzvot
tzivanu
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 la'asok
lasot
b'nei
divrei
Torah.
b'nei
Torah.
Torah.
Blessed is the Eternal, whose mitzvot, whose commandments make us holy, and who commands us to immerse or engage in words of Torah. All right, I'm really excited to welcome back Rabbi Darah Lerner. She is the Rabbi Emerita of Congregation Beth El in Bangor, Maine. However, she told me she's living the life in beautiful New Mexico, and so I'll turn it over to her. Rabbi Lerner, please.
Welcome. So nice to see so many of you today. And in
It's nice to
my
also see
part
you.
of the world is a beautiful day. Um, as the good rabbi has already said, yes, highly participatory. In fact, almost straight off the dock, I'm going to ask a question. And again, you can type answers into the chat, raise your hand, offer them. But we're going to start straight away in community participation. So my very first question is, I want you to think back to your childhood, however you define that, and think about those things that you counted the days to, either counted up or counted down days to events or things in your life. So share with me stuff you, back when you were a kid, what did you count the days to? The classic, a birthday, end of school, beginning of camp, summer vacation, yay. Um, Other ones that people counted to as kids. Bring up the chat so I can see. Christmas, excellent. So holidays, counting to holidays. Saturday, oh, writing lessons. Nice. Didn't have those, but recently was actually on a horse for the first time in forever and a day. It was fun, even if it was short. Other things that you counted to um, as a kid. All right. So part two of that question, oh, seeing family, great. Um, Part two of the question, and again, feel free to raise your hand and unmute, and I'll, have you dig a little deeper. Um, what were you really counting to when you counted to your birthday or the end of school or a family visit or camp? So we get that it's your birthday. I got that part. But what about your birthday was what you were looking forward to? Because I'm assuming as an 8-year-old, you weren't that excited about turning 9. All right, we've got driver's license, um, a change for the better. Oh, that's a nice answer. Um, Other things that what were you, something that felt special or different? All right, by show of hands, any of you counting down to presents? Come on, raise your hand. No, when you were a kid, you weren't excited about your presents? Okay, some people weren't, but that's a classic. Um, Somebody put in being with others like me, so that must be the response to the cat. Happiness, nice answer. All right, what else about your birthday were you looking forward to? Was it seeing family? Seeing friends? Was there something else about the birthday was that actually made oh, cake. Excellent. Parents, getting older, having a pause, taking it easy. Oh, so for my favorite answer, pirate costume party. Never had one of those. Uh, oh, being closer in age to your big brother, presents and how they represented my parents' love. Nice. Having a pause, uh, changing the count, seeing friends and family. Hanukkah was, oh, I'm gonna dig a little different, being mortified. So, Susan, you care to explain what being,
Yes, as a child, I was extremely shy.
ah,
I am now what is categorized as an introvert, but I am not shy and retiring. But as a child, I was very shy, and
mm,
I can only imagine that my birthday parties were not great events.
Okay, thank you for being open to share that. So I want to just lean into that just a hair that sometimes things that we might be looking forward to sometimes in some ways come with a, if nothing else, a trepidation. Maybe the party was going to work out anyway, even if you were shy, but there's a certain amount of trepidation and little angst that also went it. And Rabbi, anytime after this, it'll be lunch. You can grab some cake for dessert. So, all right. So we have a lot of these great ideas about what we were really looking forward to, and I want to just highlight some of them, which is, yes, in fact, getting older. Some of it's physically things like presents, physical things, might even consider those rewards. But there's other things that we're mentioning like pause and friends and family. So I want to sort of think about those kinds of things that we were looking forward to. Now we're going to press the fast forward button on our lives. And now that we're adults, and you can think back as early as your 20s or in this moment, what do you count the days to now? And some of them can be repeats. It's okay if you're still looking forward to your birthday. Don't mind. If you're still looking forward to Hanukkah, all good. But what else are we looking to? Shabbat. Other things that we count to as adults? Trips, okay? Connecting with friends, time with family and friends. We're back to cake. Counting the Omer, bonus cake. In this case, of course, cheesecake. Concerts, family celebrations, retirement, seeing kids, grandkids. Um, all right, anyone, this was a recent event like, yesterday, I think it was. Anyone count until their taxes are due? I got mine in early this year, but often it's, oh my God, it's only 3 more days. I got to get it. Anyone else, tax counter? Meetings that are important. Okay. Other things as an adult. Oh, Canada, you have 2 more weeks, slackers. Great. Let's think about the last few years. What as adults did we count? And I'm going to toss a few of these out in the sake of time. But I don't know about you, but I remember when I was counting a few years ago, I was counting how many days we had been in lockdown. Yes, elections. How many days we had been in lockdown for COVID. We counted those. We counted the days that there were people held hostage. We counted I personally just went through some major health stuff, and I counted the number of treatments that I had and had left. Somebody mentioned days of war. How many days until I could walk after breaking my ankle? So, in addition to all the fun things, we count time for different reasons as adults. Some of them are more somber, those, a couple of the ones for childhood were also. And the reason I wanted to start with this giant pool of what we count, I want to come back to the second question I had for you, which is, what are we counting or what are we thinking about when we're counting to these various things? And I'll give an example of like my question. For example, when we think about counting tick taxes, and again, it's on my mind because yesterday, at least here, was the due date, we can think about it in terms of, a financial thing and a paperwork thing. But what if we thought it, what could we think about it, or do we think about it in another frame? What are our taxes? Our taxes are, in a sense, our commitment to social services, to things that our government does for people. Taxes are also about community and how our money could be improving things for other people. What is it then we're thinking about when we're counting to the end of treatment? What are the real things that I'm counting? I'm not counting how many times I sat in a chair and had lovely conversations with nurses, as nice as that might be, but I was counting to health. I was counting to transformation. What other things are adult things are we really counting in the way that we taxes are counting to supporting community? These other things that we're talking about, retirement. What is retirement really? Yehuda?
It's interesting that for the most part, we're very concerned with process. The journey of 10,000 steps starts with the step, and it's the journey that's important. But in this particular case, we're concerned with the end.
Okay, nice. So I want to hold the word journey and I want to hold the word end. What else are we, Susan?
T.S. Eliot said, to make an ending, you have to make a beginning.
Okay, thank you. David.
As we get older, comparing the number of years ahead of us versus the number of years behind us,
Mm-hmm.
likely ahead of us, since we never know.
Okay. Rabbi.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar from what David just said. I put in the chat that I often count down to time with family who live elsewhere, and I think for me that often comes down to being aware of the limited time that I have with people that I love that I don't get to see very often.
Nice. Nice. That. So I want to, with all of this stuff I've just put out on the table for us to think about. And I abbreviated them in my notes to think about what we're really counting. I think about them in the following vocabulary. We talked about them sometimes in concrete ways, talked them about people, but I want to think about one, what are we really counting? Often birthdays, it's sort of a universe of celebration, reward, etc. It may be cake, but it's also people. It's fundamentally, though, about getting something, but emotionally up, emotionally up. We're counting to travel. We're not counting, yes, we're counting to the vacation, but what is travel? Travel in Jewish tradition is a way of satisfying this great idea that God may ask us at the end of our lives, did we see God's wonders? So it's not so much about the getting on the plane and arriving in Spain, but did we do the big thing of seeing the amazing stuff in this world? Another thing that all of this counting does is pointing out how we can be responsible. That's what taxes are, is our responsibility to community and to each other. The idea that we're measuring journeys, interesting. So all of those things for me, the reason I'm bringing them up is because what is hope at some level? Hope is a concept and a behavior in my world, but it's often hoping for the things that those things that I've just suggested are actually pieces of hope. Responsibility, we don't think of that as hopeful necessarily, but if we're responsible and our tax structure works, we are being hopeful about what the world could look like, about how our country could take care of each other, about how our schools could be good, about how our roads could be improved. So that in counting these things that we don't think about, we think about in concrete cake. We'll come back to that. But what is cake? Cake is taste, and we're hoping we're going to have a delicious cake. Hoping that we get our taxes in on time, not kind of exciting. But again, it's really about the responsibility. And what is responsibility? It's connected to the outcome. And we hope that outcome is going to be a better society that we live in. Treatment cycles, that's a fundamental. What do we hope for? We hope for a long and healthy life. That's what I'm hoping. So counting is not just the concrete or not just the ideas, but they're all ultimately flavors of hope. They're different ways to see that we have small hopes all the time. and that by counting them, we can start to see them more clearly. Susan.
This is not sort of an aside, but after I broke my ankle, I was non-weight bearing for 6 weeks, and I was in a wheelchair. And my sisters had very generously purchased for me laundry service. And one day I went to hurl the bag out my front door, and one of my cats escaped. And I was terrified, and I just kept calling Oliver, Oliver, and I put food out, and he kept walking back and forth. And finally, I said to myself, maybe he is not used to me sitting in this frightening device, and managed to stand up on one foot, open the door, and he came in. So,
wow,
a lot of hope there.
That is a really interesting. And again, it's this way that we don't necessarily frame hope typically. Who would have thought that it's hopeful to stand on one foot to call your cat?
Mm-hmm.
Not a classic definition of hope.
Well, I sure hoped he didn't run away. That's for sure.
That one's clear. But again, I want us to, what I'm pushing is to think about hope as being a piece of all the other threads that we experience when we count. All right, what's our text? Maybe several of you already mentioned it, that we are counting the Omer. So we're in a season of counting. We are in a season. So I wanted to think about what else we count and how that impacts, how our text can make us see or help us experience all these typical counts as moments of hope in our lives. So the first one, of course, is if we're counting the Omer, what are we counting? Well, the first and foremost hope in the world is we should have enough to eat. So the very first thing that the Omer does is roots us in food. Pop quiz. What's the first reference of Omer in the biblical text? And don't worry, there is no grade. Does anybody know when Omer as a word and it related to food comes up? Oh, Yehudit. I'm not sure if that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah. Wasn't it a measure of barley in the ancient temple of Jerusalem?
But that's actually later than I'm looking for. But you are absolutely correct. It is a barley measure. But before it was a barley measure, does anyone know what it was? Okay. The answer is, I even stumped the rabbi. Bob.
Manna. It's referring to manna, and Avseya is somewhat of an Omer.
Excellent. So the first reference to this Omer that we are now counting that's barley and part of a much later period of time is that the first Omer is the first food divinely delivered to us that we think about in those terms in Exodus. Manna is an Omer. So the reason I want to have us think there is that it's deeply associated with food, not just the later agricultural period, but the part where we aren't even an agricultural people according to our biblical text. And Omer is an important food-based thing and requires, if you will, a certain amount of hope because it's delivered on schedule by God, not by our hand. As we as a people move forward and our story moves forward, it becomes a partnership. What is Omer? It's the partnership between us going out and planting the barley so it's there and going through the cycle of working on it. But there's also a piece that's the divine or Mother Nature, if that's the vocabulary you like, where Mother Nature does her part and we do our part. Planting is full of hope, absolutely. You plant, whether it's roses that you hope are going to bloom or food you're going to hope to eat. Planting is hope. And so we're spending time counting the Omer. It's inherently hope driving. We hope we're going to get the food, the plant's going to be successful. We hope we're going to stay connected with God. We hope we're going to arrive at Shavuot and be ready for that moment. So counting the Omer is all the way back to manna. It's the process of being ready to bring barley to the temple for sacrifice and for relationship, and responsibility to community, because that barley at the temple doesn't disappear. It supports our system and our community and others. So it's a hope, and a hope buried in responsibility. Having children is the ultimate expression of hope. Yes, yes. The really bad humor part of me would have several jokes, but I'm going to be good and not say any of them. Other than, well, I'll say one. We do know what causes that now. Okay, sorry, just had to. It's my nature. So counting the Omer is about the idea that it's historic, it's biblical, it's temple, and then we start getting more layers on it where the idea of counting the Omer takes on a midot and a spiritual. So we have the various aspects of the divine that we're remembering in the counting of the Omer, and behaviors, kindness, connection, etc. So we start having a next layer of what. And again, all of those things that we're counting are rooted or connected to hope. What is kindness other than making the world more hopeful? Your being kind adds a positive and makes somebody else's day better, or makes your own day better. So there's another layer of counting the Omer. It can also be about yourself. People use the counting of the Omer for self-improvement, to reflect on your own behaviors. And often that includes sentences like, I hope to be X, Y, or Z tomorrow that I wasn't today, or in the future. I hope to be more mindful. I hope to be more respectful. I hope to be more caring, to think about who we are. And counting is not just for the person counting. It's a power for me. But counting is also for what is counted. If we're counting people, it says they matter. If we're counting Omer, we're elevating the importance of our history and our tradition. So all of these counting to participate in the counting of the Omer, this text that can inspire us to be more hopeful in the world by engaging in all of these ways we understand counting can work. Counting to freedom, that's often what retirement is. I am free to behave, to do something different. I'm counting to travel. I'm free to see something new. The counting process elevates our daily awareness and our ideas. I'm going to pause and offer, we have some time for your reflections, comments, and then I have some very fun Omer counters in case you don't have one to show you. So comments about counting as hope and the idea that hope sometimes counts. Rabbi.
I like the period of the Omer because it always feels to me like this opportunity to rise in holiness. The mystics think about us as moving from Egypt, from the Exodus towards Sinai during these 49 days, because of course we're moving from Pesach to Shavuot. And I think it's about sort of like that moving from freedom from toward freedom to. That is to say, when we leave Exodus, when we leave Egypt, we are no longer enslaved. But then who are we going to be? Sinai is about what we choose to be. So I like to think of these 49 days as being an opportunity to really think about who you want to be, and that's hopeful because it means that we have the power to envision our own best selves.
Beautiful. Thank you. Bob and then Doreen.
Well, I'm sorry to say this, but all of these examples of hope and counting are elitist and privileged and do reflect our reality, but that's not true for everyone in the world. And that's, I guess, my yeah, Debbie Downer comment.
Okay, and interesting. I will sit with that a minute. Thank you, Doreen.
I, I've kind of looked at it like the counting of Omer. The Jews had been in, or the Israelites have been in Egypt for so long, they kind of synchronistically forgot a little bit who they were, and they had to rediscover themselves as they were coming out of Egypt and into the desert, their relationship with God and who they were. And I kind of look at it, counting Omer is for me, during the year, little stuff creeps back in that you thought you dealt with last year. And so I kind of think of counting Omer as my time to clean out all that extra stuff that I never wanted in there anyway that creeped in because somehow or another I just don't pay good attention. You know what I mean? And you end up getting little parts of things that you never wanted to begin with. And so I was the one that wrote in the chat, hope should be the background music of our lives. And hope underlies why I count Omer, because I'm hoping to be more making my community a better place every day. And I use Omer to help me sift part of that stuff out that shouldn't be there.
Nice use of Omer. And again, one of the classic understandings is this notion that we're dealing with some self-reflection. And to remember, it doesn't live in isolation. It's also connected to those other holidays in our tradition that are supposed to do that same thing. Obviously, Yom Kippur being the peak of reflecting on our lives and looking back. Other thoughts on how counting things in our lives can challenge or inspire hope. Aviva or Yehuda, I didn't see who. Yeah.
So hope being the most actionable word, because what in everything that you're saying and everything we're talking about, the action goes back to us, right? When we talk about the hopefulness of taking a tiny seed and planting it in the ground, that's a partnership. That is a partnership, but the ones having to mind the work and mind everything around it. The neighbors, if you're growing a field, you have to have a good relationship with your neighbors. I mean, it extends to forever. But in response to Bob, it is a privilege, but it's also the ultimate responsibility. Like there's no avoiding it. The privilege, the responsibility is the privilege. And then I also want to say the obvious, because we missed the first minute, maybe somebody said this, but hope being the national anthem of Israel is possibly the only reason we can be here together having this conversation. Because, against all odds, here we are. And that's hope, I think. I say that having just come back from Israel a week ago.
Oh, well, I'm glad you went and came back safe. I want to point out that Sir Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, always try to get the title in the right order. He says a description of the Jewish people is that we are to be an agent of hope in the world. That's his fundamental understanding of what Judaism is, as expressed in many more pages in one of his books. But the short version is that's our job. Rabbi Lord Jonathan, thanks. I can never get the order of his names. Yehudit.
Yeah, I wanted to say, like, isn't hope maybe something that is expressed by doing hard things? Like when I left Egypt, or when we left Egypt, of course it was so hard, and we would not have done it if we would not have been hopeful for a better future for us somehow.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, particularly the word hard. Yes, hope is sometimes about the hard thing. All right. I think, Sarah, you get the privilege of a comment, and then we're going to say goodbye because we've already run out of time.
Oh, I'll shift the word count a little bit. In that I think we're still all on probation. And I'm counting my days left on probation and counting on my being able to change enough to come to the end of my life, indeed, to be able indeed to be that Tselem Elohim.
It doesn't get any more beautiful than ending with the work to become B'Tselem Elohim. So I will leave it with that and invite you to count your days so that you may have a heart of wisdom. And remember that that requires rolling up the sleeves, as is mentioned, as we embrace the privilege to roll up our sleeves and do the hard work.
Thank you to Rabbi Darah Lerner for this really wonderful session. I think it's worth, because we were talking about counting the Omer, I just put into the chat today's count. Hayom Arba Asar Yom Shehem Shnei Shvaot La Omer. Today's 14 days, 2 weeks of the Omer. So if you haven't been counting Omer, you have until 49, and we get to now count down, or count up, I suppose, the days to Shavuot. Thank you again to Rabbi Darah Lerner for teaching us today. Next week, we will be studying with Rabbi Leah Moser, who's going to be talking about finding hope in the mourner's Kaddish. We actually have a couple of prayers over the next few weeks. Rabbi Emily Losben Ostrov will be teaching on Psalm 23 a few weeks from now as well. So I hope everybody has a good and hopeful week, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.